Okay, welcome everybody to this week's training. This is the last training series, or this is the last training in our October training series for beginner level Canvas work. And this week's topic is going to be all about rubrics and SpeedGrader. These are actually two of my favorite topics because it makes grading a lot easier and a lot quicker when you have assignments hosted on Canvas versus like collecting papers in class and things like that. So just as a reminder for this week, I did want to remind you that we do have our Canvas page called Beginner Level Trainings, Canvas Tricks and Treats. In order to register for this training and get these recordings, you did have to add yourself to this course. But I'm going to leave this open. So even though today is the last day of the training series, and I'm going to be adding this rubric probably to, I'm going to be adding this video probably tomorrow of this training recording. I am going to leave this open. So you can keep this on your dashboard if you want. Of course, if you go back to training number 1, you'll be reminded how you can hide courses you no longer want from your dashboard. But if you ever want to revisit these mini trainings, this page will still be here, so you can click and you can come in here and you can find them listed out in order, and then also get access to my contact information if you need to remember it, so you can reach out with additional questions. But like I said, today is going to be all about rubrics and SpeedGrader. So let's hop on into the topic. Now, a rubric is pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure you've used them in your regular classes for however long you've been teaching. I know I used paper rubrics on all of my assignments and assessments and things like that. Well, fortunately, there is a rubric tool built into Canvas, and sometimes it's missed because, in my opinion, it's not the easiest to find, but once you know where it is, it's easy. But it's just one of those things that if you don't have someone show you where it is, your chances of stumbling into it might not be as high. So what I'm going to do first is imagine that you've created a discussion board that's graded, or you have created an assignment. What you can do once you've created a discussion board or an assignment, and you can review how to do that, and I believe it was last week's training and the training before that, that we talked about assignments and discussions. Once you have an assignment or a discussion created, as long as it's set to be graded, you can now add a rubric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go to one of my example assignments here. So once I get into my assignment, I see that it's worth 4 points. Normally, I would have instructions and stuff here so that my students knew what to do, but this was just an example, so there aren't instructions up here, but that doesn't matter for this step of the process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the plus rubric button. So if you look down here, there is a plus rubric button. From here, what I can do is I can start working on building a rubric. Now, for starters, I'm going to give it a title. So we'll put this as the planets assignment rubric. And then if I come down here, I have some criteria that I can begin adding. So the first thing is going to be your criteria, a description of what it is. Now, this is going to be a terrible rubric. I'm just doing this as an example, but I'm just going to put for the description, let's say that the assignment was completed. And then I can put some blah, 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 basic information about what I'm looking for that being completed. I'm just going to type out a description there. You get the idea. And I'll hit update criterion. And so what that does now is it does my title and then the description below it. I can then come over here and set the points. So by default, it's just going to have like, I think 5 points is the default. I don't know why, it just is. But I can do criteria. So if I click this little pencil icon where it says 5, I can click that, and this is a 4-point assignment. So I'm going to make that I'm going to make this 2 points because I'm going to have another criteria as well. I can give it a title like full marks or maybe excellent, however you want to structure that. And then the assignment was fully completed. I can put a description so that when my students come in here, they know what they're supposed to do. Now, Again, I would have these more detailed if I was actually making this for students, but I don't need this to be a training on rubric writing, since most of you already know how to do that. So we got 2 points here, and then that's 2 points over here on the side. Since this is a 4-point assignment, I'm just going to make it match. And then what I can do is I can either click the pencil icon to edit this last criteria and put no marks, like, or incomplete or something like that. I'll just make it incomplete. Incomplete. The assignment was not complete. If I update that, that then adds the description to the criteria. If I want to add something in between these two, I don't just have to stick with 2. I can actually have as many of these as I want. So I'm going to hit this plus button here in between in order to add points in between. So I can do plus, and then that gives it a score of 1. So what it'll do is it'll automatically break it down, the points by percentage based on how many criteria you have and how many points the question is worth. So this one is worth 1 point. So let's say that the criteria for this is average. The assignment was completed and was just okay-ish. Okay, so I put my rating description, I put my title, I got my points. Now I'm going to hit update rating. So once I do that, that then creates my 3 different criteria. And like I said before, if I wanted to add more, I could add more. I could just hit the plus in between to create points in between these, and then I'd have even more criteria. So it's up to you how you want to do that. In this case, I'm just going to keep these 3, but it's the same process over and over. So I can just hit plus to create additional criteria. I will say a word of caution. Once you've created criteria, you can't really click and drag them around like you can in other places in Canvas. It's one thing that kind of annoys me. So like if I ever messed up on my points or whatever and I needed to add something in between and I couldn't do that anymore, I just have to delete and restart on that. But in this case, it looks correct, but I cannot click and drag. So you'll kind of want to plan out ahead of time how you want this to be stacked. Because like if I wanted to add something bigger than 2 or whatever, I'd have to retype these and move them down the line. Once I am done with that, I can add more criteria to the side. So in this case, I'm going to hit the plus criterion button down here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me 2 options. So number 1, I can do new criteria. So what that's going to do is it's going to make a completely blank one with all the default options, and I'm going to fill it out just like we just did. Otherwise, if I want to keep this same like point scale, like let's say I'm good with this and I want this point scale to be what I use for each of my criteria, I can then hit duplicate. And what that does is it gives you the ability to change the title. I'm going to change this one to completed on time. And then I can do my criteria. The assignment was completed on time. And then if I hit update criterion, what that does is it makes an exact copy of it down here. So I like this option because, like, especially if your rubric's a little more complicated and you have multiple point areas going on here, you don't have to redo that for each one. So what I can then do is I can come over here and I can click the pencil icon and I can actually change the rating description and all that stuff. So in this case, I'm going to just put that was fully completed on time. We'll update that. And so that's a different criteria now. And then we'll change this one by hitting the pencil. On time and was just okay-ish. And then the last one, the assignment was not completed on time. So then I can hit update criteria. So once I've done that, I can just keep moving along. So In order to create another criterion, I'll just create the plus criteria button, and then that'll allow me to add a new section to my rubric. And just like before, I can either duplicate it or I can create a totally new one. So now I can duplicate one of these or create a totally blank one. And just to show you what that looks like, if I do new criterion and I just do a brand new one, it's going to ask for a description. Quality work. This is the worst rubric of all time, but like I said, it just does the default options. So it does my default options, and then I can update that just like we did when we created this first one. So the option is yours, whichever way of those you want, whichever one of those options you want to pick. And if I ever want to come through and edit this rubric, like remove some of the criteria, I can just hit the little trash can that's up in the corner, and that will actually get rid of criterion that I don't want. And then if I change my mind, let's say on the points area up here, I can just hit the little trash can. You have to have two, so you can't delete these ones, but you can delete the middle one. So the one that I manually added by hitting this plus button, I can just hit that little trash can to delete it. And then with that process, you're able to build out your rubrics just like you would have it on paper that you would give out to your students. So questions about creating that rubric before I go into some of the settings for rubrics and how you can move them around. I'll check the chat, see if we have any questions. And of course, if anybody wants to ask off mic, you certainly can. Okay, I am going to come back here then. So now that we've created the rubric and we've got our points and we've got our criteria, and hopefully yours look a lot better than mine does, I can come down here and then I have some additional options. So usually these are pretty self-explanatory, but like this one says, I write free-form comments. So if you want to be able to like add your own comments to the rubric, once students have submitted an assignment, you can do that. And once we go over SpeedGrader, you'll be able to see what that looks like. I can remove the points from the rubric so they don't see points. They just see levels. And I do know some teachers that do that because they are using like the 4-level grade scale that we have here at OPS. So some teachers do that. Some like to keep the points. It's just kind of up to you. But I can remove the points by clicking this option. And so if I remove that, then ta-da, there's no more points. So you can do like, I've been out of the classroom too long. I don't remember what the 4, 3, 2, 1 stand for, but you could put those in there if you wanted to. Otherwise, you can keep points. So I'm going to click that off, though. I'm going to leave points on this one. Just ignore the outcomes thing. That's another thing that we use when we go into Mastery Gradebook. But this is an important button that I would recommend clicking. It says use this rubric for assignment grading. And what this does is it allows you to click on the rubric to grade your students. So, and you'll see what I mean when we go through SpeedGrader. So I am going to select that option to use the rubric for assignment grading. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit create rubric. What that does is it plugs the rubric down here at the bottom, and then when your students come to the assignment, if I go into student view, they can actually see the rubric right below the instructions. So this is where the instructions go when I have assignments or when I put those in, and then they'll see the rubric right below it. So it's really convenient for your students and for you when it comes to grading. So now I'm going to leave student view. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is where do I find this if it's a graded discussion board? So for discussion boards, it's the same process to set up a rubric, but the button's located in a different spot. So if I click on a discussion board, which I can tell by the little discussion icon right here, if I click on a discussion board that's graded, I'll actually not see a plus rubric button down here. Instead, I have to come up to these 3 dots, which is also where you edit the discussion board. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the, sorry, get this little window out of the way. I'll hit the Add Rubric button. So if I click Add Rubric, I can then click the Add Rubric button. And from here, I can do the same thing that I just did. So it's the same window, it's just in a different place, but it has all the same options, all the same building tools. And so that's how you can create a rubric in a discussion board if you want to attach one there as well. It's just a different spot, really. With that, the final thing I wanted to talk about with rubrics is probably one of my favorite parts of this. Once you create a rubric, you can actually just continue to use that rubric. So it's a resource that doesn't go away. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to click the Planets assignment again here. I'm going to come down to where my rubric is, and I'm just going to get rid of that rubric that I just created. So I'm going to hit the delete button. It's asking me if I'm sure. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend that this is a brand new assignment and I want to attach a rubric. What I can do is hit the plus rubric button, and instead of creating a rubric here, like it gives me the option to, there's actually a button up here in the top right corner that says find a rubric. And if I click there, what this does is it lists every rubric for every course that I've created rubrics for. So if I'm teaching 7th grade science and I want to use a rubric from one of my assignments there in this course, even if it's a completely different course, I can click on it. And this is also why naming your rubrics is important. I can find a rubric from another course and I can click on it. If I click and make this box bigger, I can see what the rubric looks like. This is a real simple rubric. Let me see if I can find one that has more criteria. Not in that course. Here's one. So let's say that I made this rubric in another class, or I even made it in this class. Let's say that I have multiple assignments that use the same rubric. I've seen teachers do this with like bell work. What I can do is I can click it, see what it looks like. Oh, yep, this is the rubric I want for this assignment, and I can hit use this rubric. And it just plugs a copy of that rubric right into my assignment. I love that feature because, you know, sometimes creating rubrics can be time consuming. Once you've built rubrics in any of your Canvas classes, you can use them anywhere. So that's the thing that I love. And it automatically saves. You do not have to save these anywhere. It will just automatically go into your rubrics area once you've created and attached it to an assignment. So it's really nice how it works that way. Then if I do want to change something, so let's say this is just a similar rubric to what I want to use, and I just don't want to start from scratch, I still have the option to hit the pencil icon, and I can update this rubric for just this assignment. So I really like that. I can even rename it if I want to. So yeah, really great tool. You build those rubrics and then you just keep them. All of the rubrics that you've ever created will be stored in Canvas automatically once you hit the update rubric button, and then you can plug them into other assignments at will. So yeah, really love that tool. Questions about rubrics before we hop into SpeedGrader? And I will be checking the chat too, if you don't want to unmute. Okay, I don't see anything. Let's go into our last topic. So now what we're going to talk about is SpeedGrader. This, other than the rubrics, is arguably one of my favorite tools in Canvas because it makes grading so much quicker. So I'm going to go to an assignment in one of my courses. This is an assignment that I use in a training class. You'll see I have a rubric attached to it, and I have 0 out of 41 submissions graded. So I am behind on my grading, which is very reminiscent of what it was like when I was in the classroom. So I'm going to hit the SpeedGrader button up here in the top right corner. So this SpeedGrader is a built-in tool in Canvas that allows you to grade student submissions. So SpeedGrader up here in the top right corner, if I click on it, what that's going to do is it's going to open into this window. And from here, I'm able to grade all of my student submissions. So let me I'm going to minimize that box for now. show you how this works. So for starters, you have a person's, you can see the student's name up here, and then you can see their submission here, and then over here is where you actually do the grading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to somebody. Let's do, I'll just do the one I'm on already. I'll just have to email them and let them know if they see something, that that's what this is. So this is just a joke question that I asked in a training, so don't take this person's answer seriously, but they have a really nice one. So they built 12 Habitat for Humanity houses, which is awesome. But I'm going to grade their assignment. So in this case, I asked them to answer 2 questions. If I wanted to skip to another student, I could do that. So all of my ungraded ones are marked in yellow. I can just scroll through the list and pick the student. And from here, what I can do is I can come over here to the right side, and there's a View Rubric button. So if I click View Rubric, and I can make this bigger, by the way, by coming over here and clicking and dragging this gray bar. What that does is it just gives me a bigger view of my rubric. And what I can do is I can manually put in points by clicking and typing, or I can just tap right on the assignment. So I'm going to say that this person did an amazing job, except I'm going to give them 1 point less just for giggles. So I can click that option, and what it does is it automatically assigns the points, and then I can hit save. What that does is it gives the student the grade, and it automatically updates my gradebook in Canvas. So in the spot in my gradebook where the grades are housed, this now shows up as a 3 out of 4 for this particular student. Then what I can do is I can come down and I can add more specific feedback. So if I tap on this box, I can actually submit feedback. So you did a great job. And I can hit submit. And then that gives the student the feedback. So when they go to SpeedGrader on their screen, they'll actually see my comments in here. But it gets even better, because another thing that I can do is there's a little camera icon down here. And if I click this, I can actually record a quick video that will plug in there. So I can give video feedback if I want to. So I can give video feedback, or I can type feedback. Another option that I have is this little text box right up here that's in the corner. If I click here, it gives canned comments. So in the canned comments area, you can click and it will add the comment directly to the student. So if you have an assignment that you're giving a lot of similar feedback, what you can do is you can come in here and you can customize your canned comments that you can click on to plug the feedback directly in. So let's say I'm telling a bunch of people the same, a similar thing. Like if they did a great job, great. In this case, this assignment was very simple. It was just 2 sentences explaining how last year went. I could do, wow, seems like you did some great things with your students last year. And then I can hit add to library, and then that adds it to my library. So what I can then do is I can click on it, and it will automatically plug in, and I can hit submit. And then that will submit the comment to the teacher, or the student in this case. Additionally, I can edit this list. So if I click back into my comment library, I can hit the delete button to get rid of ones that I don't want. So I'm going to get rid of you did a stellar job. And if I want to change one, I can click the pencil icon and change that. So I know we all like to give original feedback, but it's not always realistic, especially if it's a simple assignment and a lot of the students did exactly what you wanted and you wanted to have a similar comment for each. This is a good quick way to do that. So, but yeah, you can just click on them and then they pop right in. And then the last feature that I wanted to show you is this is actually an annotation tool. So what I can do is I have a variety of tools up here at the top. This one's a pencil icon. If I click this, I can pick the color, and I can write right on the screen. So I can circle this, provide feedback. I'm doing this on a mouse, so it isn't super easy, but like, I can underline things, point to things. I also have text. So if I click text and I click in here, I can type, great job, and then add feedback onto there. I can also like do this little speech bubble thing where if I click, I'll put, I really like the title. And then your students actually have the ability to do this as well. So they can put their own responses back. So if you ask a question here, I apologize. If I ask a question here or put a question in the chat, they can actually come in here and they can respond to you. So this is it's used both ways. And like I said, once I click on the rubrics and I add my points and stuff, it does automatically update my gradebook. And then it notifies the student that their assignment has been graded. They can click on it and it'll open up this window so that they can see the rubric, what they scored, and then see any feedback that you left. So, and then they can type their own responses back. They can also use the annotation tool to point things out on the document if they wanted to. So really powerful tool. I love this thing. It makes grading so much easier. I used to do science fair and I'd have to haul home like 120 giant science fair boards. Well, now I would do it digitally, digital science fair board, which is kind of the way they're moving. And I would just have to carry home my computer. But that brings me to my last point on SpeedGrader. So if you go in the Mosel Manager on your iPads, and you can also get this on your phone if you wanted, there's something called the Canvas Teacher app. If you download the Canvas Teacher app on your phone or your school iPad, you can sign in to your Canvas account, and then you can actually use SpeedGrader on a mobile device. This is great for writing. So instead of like me trying to click and drag to write on this document or having to move my mouse around to click on the rubric points and all that stuff, I can use my touch screen to just bam, bam, tap real quick on the rubric, tap and put in my canned comments, and then also put in all of these I can draw on here and stuff like that. So it just makes it a lot quicker. The teacher app for Canvas is actually I really only used that for SpeedGrader. So I like building on the computer because you get all the tools, but with SpeedGrader, I actually would use my phone or I'd use my iPad to do grading. So it just makes it go a lot faster in my opinion, but you can do it in either location. It's up to you. But I will say it's pretty empowering when you're like, waiting in line at you're waiting for your table at a restaurant and you got 45 minutes or whatever. You can literally whip out your phone and grade assignments on your phone. I mean, it's really great. So definitely check out the Canvas Teacher app. It is available on district iPads, but then also you can get it from, the App Store, and I imagine it's on the Android store too. So wherever you want to find it, just log in to your Canvas account and you can use SpeedGrader in a mobile device. So with that, that is it for today's topic. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to hop in here and see, are there any questions before we take off for today? Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now. Again, this is the last training of the series. Definitely reach out to me if you have additional questions. I will help you all year long. And then after Thanksgiving break, I am planning on doing another one of these, but with more intermediate level topics. And so I'll send out something announcing the topics. And then just like before, you can register for whatever trainings interest you. With that said, have a great day.